Well, all right, now we're going to get to the section in the manual where we talk about how do I know which way to buy. Ron, you give me all these terms, these seller financing terms and these lease option terms and these taking over debt subject to terms. How do I know when to do what and why? So let me answer that question for you right now. At least I'll tell you what I do. I'm on page 29 if you happen to have the manual, and if not, I'll go through it for you here and try to make you understand why I do what I do. However, keep in mind that what I do may not necessarily be what you do. I might be doing it for different reasons than you do it. So let's start at the top and go with the free and clear. You remember, you're going to find properties three different ways. They're either going to be free and clear, or they're going to have a mortgage on them with some equity, or over leveraged. Either way, they're going to have a mortgage, or they're going to have a mortgage on them that the seller will gladly let you take over. So you're either going to take over the debt subject to, or you're going to lease purchase it, or you're going to buy it with owner financing. One of those three. Those are the three types of terms that you're going to get. I'll say it again. Take over debt subject to, which means you get the house for free. Buy it on a lease purchase, or buy it with owner financing. My favorite of those three, of course, are buying it with owner financing. Now, buying it with owner financing doesn't mean it's free and clear, but let's start with free and clear houses. Do I want to buy a free and clear house with owner financing, or do I want to lease purchase it? That's the question. My answer is almost always owner financing, but it depends, okay? Obviously, taking over the debt is out because there is no debt on a free and clear house, so that only leaves us two options. I'll tell you why I prefer owner financing, and in fact, I'm going to start with an owner financing line of question to see if the seller is interested in taking their equity in monthly installments, to encourage them to go that direction instead of the lease purchase. So when I talk to a seller for the first time, I'll say something like, well, my assistant said that you would be interested in taking your, or lease purchasing the property if we take over the responsibility for the repairs. Is that correct? They say yes. Then I'm going to say, well, listen, I can either lease purchase it or I can buy it with owner financing. Would you rather lease it or would you rather sell it? After I say that, more times than not, they say, well, I'd rather sell it. And then I will say, well, listen, I'd rather buy it with owner financing than I would lease purchase it. So then I go into the line of questioning that is required with that, understanding that the seller will do terms, and that is, of course, I want to know what's the lowest price they'll take, what's the least they'll take down, or will they sell it with nothing down? And we answer that by saying, may I assume you'll sell it with no down payment? And then if the answer is no, we come back with, well, what's the least you could take down? And then what's the lowest you could take per month? Those are the questions I need to get answered, and that will tell me right there where I'm going with this property. By simply reading the script that is right in your manual and getting the seller to tell you what they want, now they are making you the offer, and then you can decide where to go from there based on their response. And here, let me just show you an example. Two kinds of deals. Once the seller says yes, they want to do owner financing, you're going to get a goose, which is a deal you want to stay in because you get continual revenue out of it. Or you're going to get an axe deal, which means you're going to get out of it because you can't see any real reason to stay in it. I'm looking for the geese. When I can't get the geese, I'll take the axe. So let's just go down these numbers. I got a house with a 300R, that stands for after repaired value. And in this case, on the goose side, the seller says I'll take $285 for it, and I will owner finance it. And we asked him what's the least he'll take down. He said I want $5,000. Probably started higher, worked their way down. But you'll be shocked how many times they'll say yes to, yes, I will sell it with owner finance, or I'll sell it with nothing down if you ask the question correctly. Do you remember what I said to ask? May I assume you will sell with nothing down? That's a totally different question than will you sell with nothing down? Pays to follow the scripts. About a third of them will answer yes, they'll sell with nothing down. In this case, however, the seller accepted 5 down, and they'll take $1,200 a month because that's what it takes to cover their payment. Well, in this case, it's free and clear, but they agreed to take $1,200 a month PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. There is no debt, so there is no payment they have to pay out of that. Now look, my exit strategy is going to be put on the market for about $320,000. I'm expecting to get about a $25,000 deposit if I'm lease optioning it, or down payment if I'm selling it with owner financing, which is another reason why I like buying with owner financing. If I buy the house with owner financing, I can either sell it with owner financing or I can lease purchase it. I have a choice. That's not true if I lease purchase it. If I lease it from the seller, I can't sell it to a buyer. I can't sell a house I don't own. So I've got to own the house before I can resell the house. I can put it under contract to buy and then agree to sell it, but I can't close on it until I buy it from the seller or sign my contract. In this case, I'm buying it with owner financing, or agreeing to. I will own the property if I decide to stay in it. And if it's a goose, remember, I'm staying in it. And you'll see why here. I put it on the market, I get $25,000 down, and my buyer agrees to pay me $1,600 a month, regardless of whether I'm selling with owner financing or whether I'm lease purchasing it. And that's going to depend largely in what state you live in. In fact, if you go back to the last lesson that I did, I talked about that the document that you use here is going to hinge largely on what state you live in. In this case, I get 25 in, I put 5 out, so I just made $20,000. But every month now, I collect $1,600 and I pay out $1,200, so I'm making $400 a month for however many years I'm in this deal. And then in this case, on the back end, if my buyer gives me 25, they owe me $295 because I sold it for $320. I only owe the seller $285, less what I've paid them monthly during that process. So I've got money up front, money in the middle, and money on the back end. That's called a goose. I love those geese. They just keep laying those golden eggs. I know I'm doing this because of the numbers the seller gave me. The seller made it real clear. They'll give me good terms. When I hear good terms, it means goose to me. I'm staying in it. However, when the seller gives me answers that I don't care much for example, they say, I want $300 for my $300,000 house. Imagine that. Some people actually want full price for their house. In fact, quite often, many of them, most of them do. But in this case, they said they'd sell with owner financing, or I wouldn't even be having this conversation. Now they say they'll take $20,000 for a down payment, and they want $1,500 a month PITI. Well, I can take a look at those numbers and tell that I'm not really excited about staying in this deal. I'm paying full retail price. I'm putting up a bigger chunk down than I'd write a check for. I'm probably not going to get any monthly cash flow out of it. So immediately my mind tells me I'm probably going to just assign this thing and be done with it. So that's what I do. I put it on the market for $320. I get the same 25 down here from my buyer. And since I've got to pay out $1,500 a month, I can't get much of a spread. So I make up my decision after finding this buyer. I'm just going to close on this lease purchase and then assign my contract back to the seller, take my measly $5,000 here and hit the road. Because remember, if I'm collecting 25, the seller's getting 20, so I'm only making $5,000 on that deal. Now, before Axe came along, I'd say this deal would have never even got off the ground. When the seller wanted retail price and they wanted a high down payment and the like, I would just say, well, okay, I'm out, and we'd let that deal go by. But since Axe came along, any deal that I can write up with terms, I can offer the terms to the marketplace and usually almost always get more from the market than the seller agrees to take down, and that's where I get my profit. Remember, in this case, I got no monthly income, I got no back end, I'm only making $5,000 and I'm out. I'm assigning this contract back to the seller and exiting. So, I like free and clear because I can negotiate great terms. In fact, in your manual, I like owner financing, but free and clear automatically means to me go for owner financing rather than lease purchase. And on page on 12, when you get this manual, there's 16 reasons, there's 16 advantages to seller financing, but I'm going to tell you what I like about them. Here's what attracts me to it the most. Number one, I own the house. I'm not leasing it with an option to buy. I own the house. That gives me absolute total control. I don't need the seller's permission to do anything now or ever. Number two, I get to depreciate this house if I don't resell it immediately. If I put a tenant buyer in this house, I get to depreciate it. It is my house. I own it. I get to write it off for as long as I own it and get a tax reduction out of it. Plus, in this case, I can make my own deal. I can create my own cash flow. Free and clear gives me the ability to negotiate low payments so that I can get a big spread from the difference between what I collect and what I pay out. And $1,200 on a $300,000 house, PITI, that's a very, very low payment. And it's likely I'll even get more than $1,600 on the exit strategy on it, so I got a nice residual monthly income there. There's a whole lot of advantages to seller financing, and there's a couple of disadvantages. And this one you want to watch out for, because in some states, just transferring title to this house is pretty hefty on closing costs. I think of, Maryland, for example. In most counties in Maryland, if I buy this house for $300,000 from the seller, I got to pay 3% just in transfer tax. That's $9,000 just to transfer ownership of this house. In that case, that might lead me to want to go more toward lease purchasing than owner financing if I'm stuck with that, with all of those entire closing costs. So there's a lot of advantages to it, seller financing, but there are a few disadvantages, and make sure you know both. More than you're going to learn on this lesson before you decide which exit strategy to take. Alright, so when I see a free and clear house, again, I'm going to first go for owner financing, and then I'm going to go for lease purchase. By the way, if I negotiate this kind of a deal, one that requires little or nothing down, I'm probably going to go ahead and close on it as fast as I can, knowing full well I can get way more down than I gave this seller on this beautiful house in this beautiful neighborhood. If I'm not sure I'm going to stay in it, like this deal, then obviously I will not close it till I find the buyer first and know what I have to work with. And that means I have to make the seller perfectly aware that that is my intent and write my agreements accordingly, which we teach you how to do in the new terms course. All right. Now, what if the house has a mortgage but has some equity in it? What do I do now? Because you have three choices. If the seller answered yes, that they will sell for what they owe on it, now you know you can buy it for the mortgage amount. If they answered yes to, I would consider a lease purchase, now you know you can lease purchase it. But in my case, I'm still going to go for the owner financing question. Remember the question? You said you would be interested in leasing it, is that correct? Yes? Well, would you rather lease it or would you rather sell it with owner financing? I'd rather sell it. Okay, then I'll go into the owner financing questions, where the same as I would on a free and clear house. Let me give you an example of one here. If you'll remember the last lesson, I showed you a house that I purchased here in Jacksonville. Remember that nice looking house that had a $351,000 loan on it and a $1,925 payment? And the realtor couldn't sell it for $385. The listing expired. The seller told me they'd sell it for the loan amount of $351. Now, I had two choices here. They would have gladly deeded me the house and left the loan in their name, and I would have bought the property subject to the underlying debt. I did not choose to do that to protect the seller. And if you want an explanation on that, go back to the last lesson. I explained it in there very well. What I did do is I bought it on a wraparound mortgage. I bought it for $351, but I had an attorney create a wraparound mortgage for the same amount that the seller owed to protect the seller. My payments to the seller are $1,925 PITI. Their payments to the bank are the same. I'll be paying the bank directly for as long as I own that property. But let's just take this example. I literally had three choices here. I could have lease optioned the property if I didn't understand that seller financing is probably in my best interest. Or I could have just taken over the debt subject to, the seller would have let me. Or I could have bought it with owner financing, which is the choice that I took. So why did I buy it with owner financing? Because I wanted to own the house rather than lease the house. And I protected the seller with the wraparound mortgage. So, if you'll remember, in 2 months, I put a tenant buyer in the house for $395 with $50,000 down, and they're now paying us $2,500 a month I'm paying out $19.25, so I got a $575 a month positive cash flow on this golden goose. Plus I've already made $50,000 minus the $4,000 in closing costs that I chose to pay when I made the decision that I'd rather buy this house than lease it. You see, that's a decision you're going to have to make. I could have lease optioned the property, I'd have had no money in it, and I could have got the same monthly cash flow and I could have got the same down payment on a sandwich lease. I chose to spend $4,000 instead on closing costs because the seller wasn't getting any money. I had to pay him to own the house. So now I own it, now I depreciate it. I don't need anybody's permission to do anything. That's a choice that I made. That's a choice that you get to make. But the point I'm making here is, whether it's free and clear or whether it has a mortgage on it, I'm going to personally kick into the owner financing mode and see if I can get it with owner financing. And of course that comes in several forms that we've discussed: land contracts, contract for deeds, in my case a wraparound mortgage, or an all-inclusive trust deed, again depending on what state you live in. Go back to the last lesson. The R, or the current market value, is $300,000. It's a nice house. It's in a nice neighborhood. But they owe $330 on it. And they're current. Their credit is good. They've got a $1,480 a month payment on it, PITI. Now the seller in this case will pretty much do whatever you ask them to do if they've made up their mind that they've got to move. I could lease option the property, for sure. The seller would probably gladly deed it to me. And of course I could buy it with a wraparound device, meaning wraparound mortgage, land contract, or all-inclusive deed of trust for the $330,000 loan. It's actually my choice usually, because the seller will generally do whatever you suggest to do in this case. However, if I buy it with owner financing or take it subject to, I've got to pay closing costs. And in some states that's measured in the thousands, not in the hundreds. If I'm in a state where it's measured in the hundreds, I still might choose to buy it because my costs to buy it are very small, assuming I want to stay in it. And that's really the decision you're going to have to make, because if you don't want to stay in it, you would probably choose to lease option it and then sandwich lease option it to your buyer and collect $10,000 or $15,000 and assign that contract back to the seller and be out of it. There's good reason. There's a case to be made to get out of it. I'm not going to get any monthly cash flow. Well, I might get a little monthly cash flow. I'm certainly not going to get any equity. It's already over leveraged. It's likely going to take years for that equity to catch back up. However, what if I stay in it? Decisions, decisions, decisions. What if I wanted to stay in it and I lived in a state like Texas with almost no closing cost? I might just go ahead and get the deed or buy it with an AITD, because I don't have hardly any closing cost, and own it and just keep it for long term. Here's the good news about debt. They all pay down. So every time you make a monthly payment on that loan, that debt gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you are able to get a monthly cash flow, that's nice. But even if you're not, in fact, let me change this a little bit. Let's say this payment on this house is not $1,400 something. Let's say it's $1,890. Therefore, you're almost certain you're not going to get a monthly cash flow on it. So now you've got to decide: do I want to own it, depreciate it, hope the value goes up, knowing the loan will go down, and stay in it for long term? And if you do, if the answer is yes, then you'll structure the deal with the seller that it's a long-term deal. In other words, you might not put any balloon in it at all. And that's the beautiful thing about over-leveraged houses. Incidentally, the one I showed you that I bought with a wraparound, there's no balloon in it. There's no balloon in it. The seller didn't ask for a balloon. I didn't mention a balloon. So literally, the term of my loan is the 27 years left that they owe on that mortgage. I am under no obligation to pay it off. In this case, I definitely would not put a balloon in it. If I bought it with a AITD, all-inclusive deed of trust out in Texas, my purchase price would be $330. I'd have the attorney draw up the paperwork, and I'd start making these payments to the bank as soon as the seller and I agreed. And I'd just sit on this thing and put a tenant buyer in there, probably collect $15,000, $20,000 up front, and just let them sit there and sit there and sit there, let the debt pay down, the value go back up. Now that's very important if you happen to live in a marketplace right now where the values are going up very quickly. I get around this country a lot, and there are some pockets of this country where they're having a pretty sharp increase in values right now. Just left Seattle, that would be one of them. If this house is in one area like DC, of course this isn't going to buy much in DC, but if it's in a really hot area, that is a real good reason as far as I'm concerned to stay in it. Because even though I wouldn't be getting any monthly cash flow, I'd get a little bit of money up front, and it might be over leveraged today, but gosh, 2 years from now, that house might be worth $400,000, or $350 or $375, at least much more than what's owed on it. So you got to make the decision of whether you want to get out or whether you want to stay in. So it's up to you now, based on the state you live in and your personal desires. I could lease option it, cost me absolutely nothing. And then I could stay in it on a sandwich lease. Still cost me nothing. Or I could buy it with owner financing. If it costs me a lot, I'm probably going to go to lease purchase. If it costs me little or nothing, I'll probably go to buying it. And if I buy it, I can either lease option it out or sell it with owner financing. So the decision on which tool I'm going to use and how I'm going to go about buying is based largely on, is it overfinanced or not? If it's free and clear, I'm definitely going for owner financing. Lease option is only an alternative. That's the last resort. If it's got a mortgage on it, but it's got equity in it, then I'm still going to go for owner financing, and then I'll drop down to lease purchase if I can't buy it with owner financing. But again, that's based on the fact that I'm willing to pay the closing cost if the seller's not getting any money in the state that I live in. If I'm willing to pay them and I want to keep the deal, it's owner financing. If I'm not willing to pay them, it's a lease purchase. Geez, I don't know whether that made it better or worse, but that's the best I can do in the limited time I got to explain it to you. On page 56, it says at the top of the page, script to call back a FSBO with a yes on will you sell for what you owe. Does that kind of make it pretty easy to figure out what script to use?
Yes.
If it says yes on will you sell for what you owe. So let's take a look at that script right now. Note the spaces mean pause. You're calling them back. Hi, Amy. This is Ron LeGrand calling you back about the home you discussed with my assistant yesterday. You got a minute? I always like to ask them for permission to talk instead of assuming that I've got it. Because every once in a while they say, no, I can't talk right now. And if you try to carry your own conversation, you don't have their attention, you're doing more harm than good. Okay. Well, I got all the facts here, and you've indicated you'd sell the house for what you owe on it. Is that correct? Yes. All right. Now it's time to determine whether you want to go see it or not. Okay. Well, I can come see the house and likely buy it and close as soon as you're ready and pay the closing cost. But the only way for me to do so is to take over your debt. Now, that means I'll buy your house and make the payments when you and I agree to. I'll start, but the loan will stay in your name until sometime in the future when I get it cashed out. Will that be a problem for you, Amy? If Amy says, no, that's not a problem, what's it say to do next? Go to the appointment script. It's time to make an appointment. Now that's assuming that you like the numbers on the property information sheet. If it looks like it's a $200,000 house and they owe $246,000 and they say they'll sell for what they owe, you're not going to go get the deed, are you? No. On the other hand, thank you. If they'll sell for what they owe, the $246, now it's totally your decision whether you want to do a lease purchase or whether you go get the deed, correct? Yes. But if it's over leveraged, you wouldn't be making this call because there's another script coming up that says over leveraged. So let's take a look. Well, we have some here. One of your deals. Now we got a free and clear house. And we got a legitimate one up here that William Stetson turned up in Florida. Free and clear. They're asking $315,000. William thinks it's worth $350,000, right, William? Right, William? Right. Okay. And it is a flexible and moving. They're not living in it. What's this, William? 690 square foot? Is that true? Huh? Oh, this is a 4-unit building? Well, that totally changes everything. Now you got to decide whether you even care, William. For the sake of what we're doing here, a 4-unit building is a totally different exit. It's a totally different ball of wax. If you buy a 4-unit building, you want to buy it with owner financing, but it says yes. It says yes. But now we got to get into the script to find out whether we want it. So I guess the script would be the same, except if you're buying a 4-unit, do you need more information like what are the rents and what's the vacancy and what's the condition and all that? Yep. But let's pretend this is the house. So it's 650 square feet per unit, is that it? All right. All right, I want to pick on somebody. I usually look for people that are putting their head down trying to avoid me. There you go. All right. First name?
Bill.
Bill. All right, Bill. I should have left it up there on the board, shouldn't I? You don't need it. Okay, Bill. You got that thing in your hand? Talk to me, man. What's it say at the top? Script to call back a FSBO with a free and clear home with a yes on owner financing.
Hi,
right,
Ron.
Bill.
This is Bill Stetson calling about your house. You discussed with my assistant yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I've got all the facts here, and you've indicated you'd entertain taking monthly payments if we can agree upon a price and terms. Is that correct?
Yeah, I said that. All the way down to the bottom.
Okay.
All of the line down to the yes.
Okay. What's the least you would accept on the price if we can agree upon terms?
Well, I had it. What did I have it at? What did I have it at? Well, I told your assistant that I'd take 315. Or is that 115? What is that? Well, 115.
Is that the best you can do?
Well, I don't know. Why don't you come out and make me an offer?
I can do that.
Okay.
May I assume that you'll sell with nothing down?
I'd consider it.
Okay. Well, it's best that as long as I know you're flexible, we take it right out and take a look at your property and see if we can work a deal.
So we're not going to talk about a monthly payment, huh?
Well,
So you're not going to follow the script, right, Bill?
it's a guy thing.
Huh?
It's a guy thing.
Okay.
What's the lowest monthly payment you could take?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'd probably have to have $500 or $600.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we got something we can work with.
Okay.
I got to go to the appointment script, right?
Yeah, if you like my answers.
I'll
All right. What if you don't like my answers, but I'm willing to owner finance? What did I just tell you to write in right there? See page 60.
I'll go to page 60.
See page 60. Okay?
Okay.
Let's try it again, Bill.
All right.
Let's see if you can follow instructions this time.
Well, I didn't cross out the line you said to scratch out, so, all right. Hi, Ron. This is Bill calling about the house you discussed with my assistant yesterday. Do you have a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I've got all the facts here, and you've indicated you'd entertain taking monthly payments if we can agree on a price and terms. Is that correct?
Yeah, I said that.
Okay. What's the least you could accept on the price if we can agree upon terms?
Well, I was only asking 115. I'd want that pretty close. Might come down a little.
Okay, is that the best you can do?
Well, it said it might come down a little.
All right. May I assume you'll sell with nothing down?
Oh, I think I'd want some down payment for sure.
Okay. Well, what's the least you could take down?
Oh, probably 5,000.
Okay. What's the lowest monthly payment you could take?
Oh, are we talking about with taxes and insurance or not?
Whatever you want. What's the least payment I can make to you?
Oh, well, if I'm going to pay for taxes and insurance, I'd probably need about 800.
Okay. Sounds fair. Let's, can we set an appointment?
Now we go to the appointment script.
Now we go to the appointment script.
Okay. Okay, well, while you got it, Bill, let's just go to the appointment script.
Let's do it.
And you get the the luxury of reading it.
Great.
That'd be on page 65.
Got it. Okay, but I have a couple more questions.
All right?
Are you the only owner of the house?
Well, my wife owns it with me.
Okay, I'll need all owners present when I come, and anyone else you need, they're involved in making the decisions, okay?
Yeah, but I'd make the decisions. I wear the pants in my family.
Okay. Last question.
You gonna let me get away with that?
Yeah, well, I know how that works there.
Do we need all owners present?
Yes,
Because we need a decision and we can't get it without all owners.
right.
Even if one thinks they're gonna make the decision, do we still need them present? Because we can't get a signature on a contract without them. All right. Are there gonna be sometimes, however, you're forced to go look with one because it's just not feasible to get the other one there, like they're out of town or they're divorced or whatever? Okay, you make your judgment call at that time. If it is a divorce thing, I always ask them, okay, I see you're getting a divorce, but is your wife cool with you selling the property? Because if the wife's fighting him, I'm wasting my time. And if they don't say, yeah, you know, we agreed to sell it, then I'm not going. All right? And your last question was?
If I come to your house and like what I see, and we agree on the details, are you ready to make a decision now and get some paperwork done while I'm there?
Well, yeah, I might want to let my attorney see it.
Okay,
Bill, your only answer is, well, that's not a problem. Let's see if we can agree first, and then I'll
Okay.
put it in writing, and then you can take it to your attorney.
got it.
That's all you can say, guys,
Right.
at this point. All right? I have another objection in here. If you're there and they want their attorney to see it, but right now, be very careful. When you're talking on the telephone, get ready to make the appointment, don't talk yourself right out of a deal. Don't try to negotiate too much when they know you haven't even seen the house yet. Just find out if they're flexible and what they have in mind, and go see the house. That's your only goal. And I'm going to tell you another thing. I'm going to tell you a couple of mistakes I see people make. And one of them is, be careful you don't get cocky. And I say that in your best interest. If you sound like you're cocky, it's not going to come across well on the other side. In other words, if you, I don't know, you figure out what that means. And don't get argumentative. You don't have anything to argue about. You haven't seen the house yet. The last thing you want to do is get argumentative. And don't push too hard. It's too early. You can't have, you don't want to try to have sex till there's a little foreplay. Ed. For those of you who remember what that is. Okay. Who will sell with no payments and no interest, and why? I put this in here in this section for good reason, because while you're talking to people and trying to qualify them, your choice of words will determine whether you get these no interest deals or not. In other words, if you're asking a seller what they'll take for a payment, and you say, well, how much interest do you want? Are you going to get a no interest deal? No. When you're saying, let's say you got a free and clear house, and they said they will take a monthly payment. Okay, what was your payment, Sherry? $600?
Yes.
Okay. Well, tell me, how'd you get no interest? I can't do it.
Oh,
I don't have a mic. What'd you say?
no, I do have 1.5% interest.
Oh, you're paying a
Small
point?
interest, Yeah.
1.5%?
Yeah.
And how did that number come about?
Well, I said I assume this loan is with no interest.
You assume this loan is with no interest? Was that a dumb thing to say on your part?
Oh,
Huh?
okay.
Yes, it was, Sherry.
All right.
Because you said that, you're now paying 1.5% interest.
Yeah.
What
Yes,
you
I-
should have said was, okay, then I will pay you $600 a month until paid, okay?
Okay,
I will pay you $600 a month till paid, okay?
okay.
All right, what does that mean?
No interest.
No interest. No interest. Okay, when they come back later and say, what about interest? Then you say, interest? Why do you need interest? If I pay you interest, you got to pay taxes on it. Don't you pay enough taxes?
Yes.
What's more important, you get the house sold or getting interest? Huh? See how easy that is to overcome?
Yes.
I'm telling you guys, most people don't care about interest. They just don't. You think they do, so you go offering them interest. And you know what? They'll take it every time if you offer it to them. Usually, their need to sell and sometimes to get a monthly payment coming in or get a relieved of one is all they need. Your big mistake is talking too much. Isn't it true? What comes out of your mouth will determine what goes into your bank account. So Sherry just made a 1.5% interest mistake.
First deal. First deal.
Okay, that she won't make again, will she, Sherry?
No.
All right. That's the cost of training, Sherry.
Yes.
You want to know what my cost was? I can't measure it, it's so big. All the stupid stuff that I did trying to figure out the right stuff or stupid stuff not to do. Are you guys going to screw up?
A little bit.
I guarantee it. Are you going to lose deals? I guarantee it. Are you going to do dumb things? Yep, you sure are. So what? It's the cost of training. In fact, I hope you get yourself a mentor that will eliminate the really big dumb things, but it still ain't going to stop the little dumb things. By the way, did she do a big dumb thing or a little dumb thing? A little dumb thing. All right, get over it.
I am over it.
I know. You'd just soon I'd not bring it up, right, Sherry? Huh? I get it. You're so happy to get the deal done, you don't much care about the interest, do you, Sherry? I get it. How do I know I can trust you? My answer very simple. Do you have any reason to believe you can't? That's my answer. Because if you really believe you can't trust me, you probably shouldn't sell to me, wouldn't you agree? By the way, learn to answer questions with questions. When you answer a question with a question, you put the onus on the other side to come up with the answer. Wouldn't you agree? Is that fair? Now, there's a big old long explanation there if you want to use it and try to memorize the points. You won't. Guys, here's the reality of it. If you get a seller that doesn't think he or she can trust you, you might want to take a good look at how you approach them because you probably gave them a reason not to trust you. And get to work fixing that. How do you dress? Do you look like you just came in from slopping the hogs? Huh? You look like you just got released from the detention center? Do you look like a mountain man? Do you look scary? Is there a reason they're not trusting you? Are the words coming out of your mouth leading them to believe they can't believe you? If that's true, work on that. Incidentally, can you put your cell phone in your pocket up here and put it on record when you walk into a house? Why not? Now when you come back out, you'll know, you quickly figure out what you did wrong. All right. Now on an axe deal, is the answers different if you're going to stay in it than they are if you're getting out of it? This is an exciting group. If I'm staying in it, then the onus is on me to convince them that I'm going to make their payment. Isn't that correct?
Right.
If I'm not staying in it and it's clear to the seller I'm not staying in it, then you ain't going to never get that question. They're not going to ask you, I know I can trust you. It ain't you they got to trust. It's your buyer. Well, I'll let you approve them. If you don't like them, don't put them in the house. Is that fair? Simple answer.